The wedding to my childhood sweetheart, Victoria, proceeded as planned. But the man escorting her down the aisle wasn't her father, Walter Sterling. It was her male secretary, Ethan Chandler. "Victoria," Ethan murmured, loud enough for me to hear. "You're pregnant, and in those heels. You must be extra careful." Victoria leaned her entire weight on Ethan, looking at me matter-of-factly. "Ethan saved my life. While I can't marry him, I promised him I'd give him a child." She placed a hand on her stomach. "When the baby is born, you are to love it as if it were your own flesh and blood." A wave of murmurs swept through the stunned guests, their expressions a mixture of shock and disbelief. My parents, Robert and Margaret Clark, looked horrified. They grabbed my arm, ready to leave, insisting we wouldn't stand for this humiliation. My soon-to-be parents-in-law, Walter and Eleanor Sterling, rushed over, urging me to think of the bigger picture, to just get through the ceremony first. Seeing the utter lack of concern on Victoria's face and the challenging glint in Ethan's eyes, I laughed. A cold, hard laugh. I ripped the boutonniere from my tuxedo lapel and tossed it contemptuously at Ethan. Then, forcing a smile at Victoria, I said, "Chint, how can the child's biological parents not have a proper wedding? Today I'll just be a spectator. The role of groom is yours, Ethan. Congratulations on your shotgun wedding." And with that I began to clap, leading the applause into the stunned silence. Chapter 1. The entire room was frozen. Victoria's face darkened. "Sincere Clark, this is our wedding day. Do you absolutely have to make a scene?" She had the audacity to say I was making a scene at my wedding. She was shamelessly clinging to Ethan Chandler, brazenly announcing she was carrying his child, and demanding I raise it as my own. What did she take me for? As for her claim that Ethan had saved her life, laughable. He took her to the hospital for a common cold, some life-saving act. Did she think I was an idiot? I snatched the microphone from the master of ceremonies. "Thank you all, dear friends and family, for coming today," I announced, my voice ringing clear. "There's been a slight, unexpected change of plans. But don't worry, the wedding will proceed shortly. We just have a different groom." I gestured towards Victoria and Ethan. "The happy couple is celebrating a shotgun wedding today. Let's give them our blessings." Dead silence. Victoria glared, her face a thundercloud. Her parents' expressions were a grotesque mixture of panic and fury. Ignoring them completely, I walked over to my parents, managing a strained smile. "Dad, Mom, let's go home." Guilt washed over me. They had lived respectable lives, never enduring such public shame, and it was all because of me. My mother, Margaret, took my hand, her expression pained. My father, Robert, stood tall. He first bowed deeply to our side of the guests. "I've arranged for another banquet elsewhere," he announced, his voice firm despite the circumstances. "Your wedding gifts will be returned. Today's meal is on me." Seeing my father bow, a man I'd always known as strong-willed and rarely yielding, brought a lump to my throat and tears to my eyes, all because of me. Though Victoria and I were childhood sweethearts, my parents had never approved of our relationship. I'd argued fiercely with them about it countless times. I used to think they were prejudiced against her. Only now did I realize how perceptive they were, seeing long ago that Victoria wasn't someone worthy of spending a life with. And how foolish I was, believing she loved me as much as I loved her, thinking I couldn't marry anyone else growing up together. I fell for Victoria during our teenage years. I followed her quietly, watching her every move. For 15 years, such a long time, even a heart of stone should have softened. But Victoria hadn't. She always kept me at arm's length, playing hot and cold, flirting with other men. Every time I saw it, I'd get angry. But like a moth to a flame, I'd always find myself drawn back to her, knowing I'd get burned, yet unable to turn away. I thought eventually she'd see my devotion and love me wholeheartedly. Reality slapped me hard across the face. She had been fooling around with her own secretary, gotten pregnant, and chose our wedding day, in front of my parents and everyone we knew, to humiliate me, without a single thought for my feelings. She never had me in her heart. I could sacrifice my pride for her, revolve my world around her. I could have explosive arguments with my parents for her, but she couldn't even grant me the dignity of an untainted wedding ceremony. Watching her cling to Ethan's arm, her other hand gently caressing her belly, I felt suffocated. Since she scorned my love, trampled it underfoot, ground it into the dirt, then I would stop loving her. Just as my parents and our guests began to move, Eleanor Sterling grabbed my mother's arm. "Margaret, dear, what are you doing? It's the children's big day. We can't let outsiders laugh at us." Walter Sterling chimed in, addressing my father. "Exactly. Victoria made a mistake, yes. Scold her, teach her a lesson if you must. But these are matters for the young couple to sort out. We elders should just observe." My mother scoffed. "Observe what? More humiliation? Our family's reputation is in tatters today." My father remained silent, looking at me, leaving the decision in my hands. Victoria walked up to me, Ethan still at her side. Her eyes were cold. "Have you had enough? Do you need to completely disgrace Uncle Robert and Auntie Margaret before you're satisfied?" Her words struck me as so bitterly. Ironic, I let out a wretched laugh. Who exactly was disgracing my parents? Was it me? Ethan looked at me apologetically. "And Mr. Clark, I am truly sorry. When I first heard you and Victoria were getting married, I wished you nothing but happiness, but—" He glanced at Victoria's stomach. "But I didn't expect Victoria to get pregnant. I made a mistake and I'll accept any punishment. But the child is innocent. I can't let the baby be rejected from birth." He fixed his gaze on me. "Mr. Clark, you're a kind-hearted man. Surely you wouldn't want to see an innocent child suffer, right?" Before I could respond, my mother pointed a trembling finger at Ethan and erupted. "What incredible nerve skin as thick as a castle wall you and Victoria were sneaking around behind my son's back, even conceived a child, and you have the gall to show up at his wedding playing the victim. I have never met anyone as shameless as you." Eleanor quickly tried to placate my mother. "Margaret, please calm down. He does have a point, you know. The child is innocent." She turned to me. "Sincere, wouldn't you agree? Who are you calling Margaret, dear? My son will have absolutely nothing to do with your daughter from this day forward." My mother shot back. "Son, let's go. We're not going through with this wedding. Let this happy family of three have their reunion." She yanked her arm free from Eleanor's grasp. Eleanor's face fell. Margaret, what kind of talk is that?" "All our friends and relatives are watching. We can't just act on impulse like youngsters." She looked back at me pleadingly. "Sincere, you always see the bigger picture. Talk some sense into your mother. We can't let our relatives and friends witness such a fiasco." Victoria spoke up coldly. "Sincere, even though I'm carrying Ethan's child, since you love me, you should accept everything about me. So what if the child isn't yours? It's a minor issue. Once the baby is born, you'll still be its father. I just don't understand. Is biology really that important?" She was actually blaming me, as if my refusal to accept her child with Ethan was some heinous crime. The sheer absurdity made me laugh again, this time laced with fury. Walter Sterling glanced from Ethan to me. "Sincere, Eleanor and I have watched you grow up. We know the kind of man you are. What's done is done. Making a bigger scene won't help. We need to focus on damage control." I turned my head, asking calmly, "How do you propose we control the damage?" Walter didn't hesitate. "Finish the wedding first. We can't become a laughingstock. Let Victoria have the baby. Abortion is hard on the body after all. But don't worry," he added quickly, "and the child will have nothing to do with Ethan once it's born. You will be the father. We'll give Ethan a sum of money and make him disappear." Eleanor immediately chimed in. Yes, that's an excellent plan." Ethan smiled thinly. "I have no objections, Mr. Clark. It was my fault to begin with. It's only right that you raise the child as your own. Once I receive the money, I promise I will never appear before you, Victoria, or the child ever again." A cold sneer touched my lips. "Of course, you have no objections. You get a pile of cash, and someone else raises your kid for free. Anyone would be laughing in their sleep over a deal like that." Victoria spoke impatiently. "Sincere, my parents have laid it all out. What are you still being difficult about? So if I didn't know you were head over heels in love with me, I wouldn't even be marrying you in the first place. Then, as you wish. Let's not get married. What did you say?" Victoria stared, incredulous. My mother cheered. "Yes, that's my good son." Walter and Eleanor panicked. "Sincere, marriage is a serious matter. You can't just call it off like this. Don't be impulsive." Walter shot Victoria a furious glare. "What nonsense are you spouting? Get over there and stand aside." Victoria shot me a resentful look before angrily pulling Ethan away with her. Walter and Eleanor turned back to persuade me. I looked at them. Growing up, I'd respected them deeply, almost like my own parents. I couldn't believe that today they weren't siding with me at all. Their only thought was to make me marry Victoria and raise Ethan's child. Seeing they couldn't sway me, Eleanor turned her attention to my mother. "Margaret, please talk to Sincere. Even if you don't consider us, think about him calling off a wedding halfway through. It will damage Sincere's reputation and your family's." I scoffed. "Reputation? Do we even have any reputation left after today?" My words made Walter and Eleanor flinch, though they quickly composed themselves. "Sincere, you can't put it like that. None of us wanted this to happen," Walter said smoothly. "Yes," Eleanor added, feigning distress. "And now that it's happened, we're suffering too. You have to understand our position." "Stop playing the victim," my mother retorted, her face etched with disgust. "Your daughter cheats before the wedding, and you two are no better. Just as shameless." She grabbed my arm again. "Let's go." I shook my head gently. "Oh, Mom, not just yet. This isn't over." I turned back to Walter and Eleanor. "You knew about Victoria and Ethan all along, didn't you? You conspired together to hide it from me, aiming to create a fait accompli with the marriage so you could manipulate me later? No wonder you pushed us to get legally registered before the wedding ceremony. Quite the calculating move." Eleanor was still trying to justify it. "Sincere, really, we did it for you too. You love Victoria so deeply, it's just one child. If you just pretended not to know, you could have married her, fulfilling your lifelong dream. You should be happy." "Happy? Bullshit, happy my foot." My mother was practically vibrating with rage. "Your whole family schemed together to deceive my son. How can such a shameless family exist in this world?" Eleanor dropped the pretense, a smug look crossing her face. "It's too late for regrets now. Sincere and Victoria are legally married. Divorce means splitting half the assets." Walter looked at me and my parents, a triumphant smirk playing on his lips. "Advise you to think carefully. Half of the Clark family fortune is no small sum. Beside them," Victoria laughed openly. "Sincere, it's just a child. It's not like we can't afford to raise it. This was just a small matter, but you had to blow it out of proportion. Why make such a scene? Pun, you shut up." My mother, red-faced with anger, lunged towards Victoria as if to silence her physically. I held my mother back, looking at the smug Sterling family trio with a cold smile. "So, you think you have me cornered? Sorry to disappoint you." I pulled out the marriage certificate and threw it on the floor. "This marriage certificate is fake." The triumphant expressions on Walter and Eleanor's faces froze. Victoria shrieked, "Impossible, how can the certificate be fake? I went with you to get it myself, it has the official seal, it can't be fake." She scrambled to pick up her copy, pointing frantically at the seal. I sneered. "And just because it has a seal doesn't mean it's real. Didn't you know seals can be forged? On you." Victoria pointed a trembling finger at me. "You tricked me, you bastard." My expression turned icy. "So you could cheat before the wedding and get pregnant. Why couldn't I trick you? And you and your parents planned to use the marriage certificate to control me, to take half my family's wealth to bail out your failing company. Am I right? Victoria stared at me, shocked. You knew. Oh, yes. Lucky for me I did. Otherwise I'd be completely at your mercy right now. Victoria gritted her teeth. Forging an official seal is illegal. Do you believe I won't call the police? Tona, go ahead, I said, completely unafraid. It would be a perfect opportunity to report today's events as well. Let everyone see just how despicable and shameless your family is. Worst case, I spend a few years in jail. But your family and the company you're clinging to, you'll be ruined, utterly. My willingness to burn everything down silenced Victoria. Walter slapped her hard across the face. Useless, can't even handle one simple thing. Victoria clutched her cheek, staring at me with pure hatred. Eleanor's voice was laced with venom. Sincere Clark, you hid this very well. You knew about Victoria and Ethan all along, didn't you? I offered a bland smile. I don't know what you're talking about. Stop pretending. If you didn't know, why wouldn't you have gotten legally married to Victoria for real? Eleanor hissed, her eyes red with fury. You call our family despicable and shameless? You're no better knowing everything but pretending ignorance. You're more vicious than any of us. Hearing this, I laughed coldly. If you hadn't been scheming against me, backing me into a corner every step of the way, would things have ended up like this? Aunt, ultimately, this is because you had malicious intentions. Until well said. My mother beamed, laughing with relief. Good son, that was brilliant. I smiled back, then turned my gaze to the devastated faces of Walter and Eleanor. Victoria glared at me hatefully. Sincere, it must have been so hard for you, knowing everything, yet putting on an act. Living behind a mask every day must be exhausting, right? I smiled faintly. Not as exhausting as you, surely. Juggling Ethan's affections while pretending with me, scheming with your parents behind my back. You practically had to split yourself in three. Probably didn't get much sleep. Tisk, tisk. Just thinking about it makes me pity you. Enough, you bastard, just you wait, this isn't over between us. Victoria spat fiercely. I shrugged dismissively. Without the constraint of marriage, what can you possibly do? Let me offer some advice. Instead of plotting revenge against me, you should focus on your pregnancy. If something happens to the baby, will Ethan still love you? Will he stick around? Ethan's expression flickered. He quickly plastered on a reassuring smile for Victoria. Darling, I love you. Even if you weren't carrying my child, I would still love you. Oh, Ethan, of course I know how good you are. Victoria looked deeply moved, then shot me a cold glare. Not like this bastard, she sneered. Claims to love me, but secretly investigates me, plots against me, refused to sleep with me before marriage. Knew my family's company was in crisis but wouldn't help. Just kept saying he'd step in at the critical moment. I bet he wanted to swallow our company whole. He talks about me cheating before marriage. Is he himself so clean? Her words didn't faze me much, but my mother was furious again. How much has our family helped yours over the years? It's your own mismanagement. Stop blaming everyone else. My father's face was grim. I gently held my mother back. Oh, let her say whatever she wants. It doesn't actually hurt us. My mother was still fuming. I squeezed her hand. All right, we've wasted enough time here. Let's go. Our friends and relatives are waiting. Wait, Walter called out urgently. After the mess you've made of this wedding today, you can't just walk away. I turned back, a cold smile playing on my lips. What? You want us to pay damages? Walter's voice was icy. I don't need your money. What I need is your oath that not a word of what happened today gets out. If our family is ruined, don't think yours will get off easy. If we go down, we'll drag everyone down with us. Hearing this, I glanced at Victoria, still glaring daggers at me, then at Ethan, head bowed, his expression shifting rapidly. I let out a short, sharp laugh. You should be more worried about your own daughter and your future son-in-law. Without waiting for Victoria's already darkening expression to change further, I turned and walked out of the banquet hall with my parents and our guests. The second banquet began. My parents told me to mingle with my friends while they took care of the relatives. Sincere, my buddy Ben Miller, waved me over. I walked towards him, forcing a smile. Sincere, man, what you did back there was absolutely brilliant. Ben was practically buzzing with excitement. Seeing Victoria and her parents furious but totally helpless against you, so satisfying. Since I told you long ago Victoria Sterling wasn't good enough for you. Look how much you did for her, and what did she ever do? Besides ordering you around like a servant? Sincere, you've got money, looks. You're the city's top bachelor. I never understood why you were so obsessed with her, like she'd put a spell on you. Maybe I was just stupid. I smiled faintly, raising my glass. Let's not talk about her. From now on, she's her, I'm me. We have absolutely nothing to do with each other. Hence the spirit. Ben raised his glass and clinked it against mine. After the banquet ended, my mother and I helped my father out. I hadn't drunk much. A woman who never loved me wasn't worth it. My father, however, had drunk heavily. All because of me. It was my fault he lost face in front of friends and family. My fault he had to bow his head for the first time I could remember. Thinking of all the years I argued with him because of Victoria filled me with immense guilt. I had been unfilial. Son, my mother said firmly as we walked, don't you dare have second thoughts and go back to Victoria. If you do, even I will lose respect for you. I quickly reassured her I wouldn't. One heartbreak was enough. There wouldn't be a second time. Just as Mom and I helped Dad into the underground parking garage, we ran into Victoria and Ethan. Victoria waved her hand disdainfully in front of her nose. Oh, you reek of alcohol. How much did you drink? Because of me, right? If you regret it now, it's not too late. Her words were so narcissistic I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Where did she get such colossal self-importance? Victoria's face hardened. What are you laughing at? Nothing. I forced down my laughter, waving a dismissive hand. Pregnant women shouldn't be around strong alcohol fumes. You're carrying Ethan's child, remember? You should probably leave quickly. Victoria huffed coldly. Ethan spoke up. Darling, I have a few words I want to say to Mr. Clark. Why don't you wait for me in the car? Victoria frowned. What's there to say to him? Fulwan, be good, Ethan said, patting her head affectionately. Hey, you messed up my hair, Victoria complained, but her face was flushed with pleasure. I felt nauseous watching them. On Sincere Clark, I'm warning you, Victoria said sharply before leaving. Mind you, if you dare do anything to hurt Ethan, I will never forgive you. She turned and walked away. I told my mother to take Dad to the car first, then turned to Ethan. All right, what did you want to say to me? Ethan smiled. Mr. Clark, I know you still love Victoria. I can give her back to you. Hearing this, my hand, already in my pocket, quietly activated the voice recorder on my phone. For this amount, Ethan held up 2 fingers, 20 million. It's not much. Once I get the money, not only will I persuade Victoria to abort the child, but I'll disappear forever. I'll never come between you and her again. You can marry her, live happily ever after. I nodded slowly. Sounds tempting. Ethan's face lit up. So you agree? I chuckled softly. 20 million really isn't much. But I have a question. If Victoria finds out you sold her out for 20 million, won't she go berserk? Ethan scoffed. Whether she goes berserk or not has nothing to do with me. All I want is the money. And let me tell you, I only slept with her for the money. I thought getting her pregnant meant I could marry her, inherit the Sterling Company eventually. But then she says she can't marry me and her parents didn't say a damn thing. If I can't marry her, can't inherit the company, and can't get any money, why should I let her order me around anymore? Since she and her parents made it sound so nice. Wait until after you marry Sincere. Get the money to save the company, we won't treat you unfairly. Now look, the goose that laid the golden eggs is gone. Of course, I have to look out for myself now. What about the child? Don't you care about it at all? I asked coldly. Ethan looked completely indifferent. And San, barely look after myself, why worry about a kid? My hand tightened around the phone in my pocket. Aren't you afraid I'll tell Victoria what you just said? Ethan burst out laughing. She doesn't trust you at all. Even if you spin the most elaborate tale, it won't mean a thing compared to one word from me. Let's see who she believes, you or me. I watched Ethan laugh, my eyes growing colder. He didn't see the child in Victoria's womb as his own at all, just a pawn to marry her, inherit the sterling fortune, and secure a lavish future for himself. And ridiculously, Victoria still treated him like a treasure. I laughed bitterly at myself, feeling a wave of self-pity. Victoria drove up, rolling down the window. Darling, we should go. Ethan waved at me. But Mr. Clark, think it over. If you change your mind, call me any time. Victoria shot me one last cold glance before driving off with Ethan. I could faintly hear their conversation drift back. Darling, what did you say to that bastard? Nothing much. Just told him to give up hope. You'd never marry him because the one you love is me. Of course, the man I love is you, only you. A sarcastic smile touched my lips. What a devoted couple. I wondered if their love would remain just as strong when Victoria finally learned the truth about Ethan. I looked forward to finding out. In the following days, I immersed myself in work while keeping an eye on the Sterling family situation. The Sterling Company had a significant funding gap. Many projects stalled, unable to meet deadlines, facing massive penalties for breach of contract. Victoria's parents frantically tried to borrow money, but the amount needed was substantial, and no one dared to lend to a company in such dire straits. Victoria started making frequent trips to the bank. At first, I assumed she was trying to secure loans to save the company. Later, I learned she was borrowing money personally to fund Ethan's extravagant spending. Because he hadn't been able to marry Victoria, Ethan had been constantly causing trouble, giving her no peace. To appease him, Victoria borrowed heavily, even diverting the company's already scarce liquid funds. Eventually, she had to take out personal bank loans just to keep Ethan quiet temporarily. I didn't think Ethan was stupid. Kicking up a fuss at this point likely meant he was planning one last cash grab before skipping town. But that was none of my business. I wouldn't be warning Victoria out of kindness. What I didn't expect was for Victoria to turn her attention back to me. She came to my office, her face set, her tone stiff. And I was wrong about what happened at the wedding. I apologize. Let's have another wedding. I was stunned. What on earth gave her the confidence to come here and propose marriage again? Did she actually think I still loved her? I chuckled humorlessly. And what about Ethan? And the baby you're carrying? Seeing I hadn't immediately rejected her, a flicker of hope crossed Victoria's eyes. She spoke quickly. We'll have the baby raised somewhere else out of sight. As for Ethan, I'll just tell him to get lost. I've spent enough money on him, he should be satisfied. But didn't you say you loved him most? That you only loved him? I asked, feigning confusion. I was just saying that to appease him, the person I truly love is you, Sincere. Victoria looked at me with feigned depth. Sincere, we grew up together. I know how you feel about me, and deep down I've always loved you too. But as a company president, I face too many temptations, too many men trying to seduce me. Sometimes I just can't control myself. But it'll be different once we're married. Our two companies can merge. With you looking after me, I know I can settle down and love only you, wholeheartedly. Ugh, I felt physically sick. How had I never noticed how utterly shameless and lacking in self-awareness Victoria was? I started clapping softly. Victoria, I have to say you've really broadened my understanding of you. She frowned. What do you mean? As I mean you disgust me. What? Victoria stared in disbelief. Don't understand? Then go back home and think hard about it. I sneered. Victoria looked ready to explode but visibly reined herself in, forcing a smile. Sincere, haven't you always loved me? Wasn't marrying me your lifelong wish? Why are you unwilling now that I want to marry you? Because I don't love you anymore. Every move you make, every interaction with you makes my skin crawl." Victoria's face finally contorted with rage. She sprang up from her chair. "Sincere Clark, don't push your luck. If it weren't for the company, do you think I'd come here? That I'd lower myself to say I want to marry you? In my heart, you're not worth a fraction of Ethan. You can't even compare to a single hair on his head." My smile turned mocking. "Is that so? Is he really that wonderful? But are you sure he truly loves you, and not just your money?" Victoria looked utterly arrogant. "Of course, he loves me." Before she could finish her self-absorbed declaration, I pulled out my phone and played the recording. 20 million. Just give me 20 million, and I'll hand Victoria over to you. I'll make her get rid of the baby, too. I'll disappear from your lives forever." Ethan's voice echoed clearly in the office. Victoria paused, then frowned. "Where did you get this recording?" "Shh, don't talk. Keep listening." The recording continued. "I never loved her. I only love her money. Can't marry me, can't give me money. Why should I let her boss me around? She doesn't trust you." Ethan's words hammered down, one after another. Victoria's face flushed crimson, then turned purple with rage. She started screaming, pacing frantically. "Bastard, bastard arg. I'll kill him." I stopped the recording and put my phone away. "You thought you could control him," I said mockingly. "But you were caught in his scheme from the very beginning. Victoria, you're like a clown, just a laughable spectacle." "Assa!" Victoria roared, her eyes bloodshot, glaring murderously at me. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I answered lightly, "Why should I tell you? We have no relationship. Whether you manipulate Ethan or get cheated by him, it has nothing to do with me. So if you hadn't come here today to discuss me, I would never have revealed this recording." Victoria gritted her teeth. "Bastard, you're just like him. You're both laughing at me." My voice turned cold. "Nobody is laughing at you. You brought this upon yourself. Your vanity, your arrogance, they blinded you. That's why you're here today." Seeing her murderous expression, I smiled faintly. "Instead of wasting your time raging at me here, you might want to head home. Ethan might have already skipped town with the money by now." Victoria froze, then dashed out of the office in a panic. I calmly tidied my desk, then picked up my car keys and headed out. Naturally, I was going to watch the show. When I arrived, Victoria was hysterically smashing everything in her apartment, screaming, "Bastard, I'll kill you." Her parents were trying to restrain her, but it was useless. Neighbors whispered that Victoria had stormed back in a fury, couldn't find Ethan, tried calling him frantically, and when the calls wouldn't connect, she started destroying things. No one could calm her down. Wonder what happened. Did Ethan run off? Oh, no way. Wasn't he crazy about Victoria? Love doesn't pay the bills. Look how furious she is. That's probably what happened. Listening to the neighbors' hushed speculation, I thought Ethan was indeed clever. He saw the writing on the wall and got out fast. Any later, and he would have faced Victoria's wrath. "Sincere, please talk to Victoria. And Sincere. Victoria's gone mad, please. Help us calm her down, her father. And I can't do anything." Walter and Eleanor Sterling approached me, their faces pleading. I offered a polite smile and refused without mercy. "I'm sorry, you've got the wrong person. I can't help you." Just then, Victoria emerged from the kitchen wielding a knife, her face contorted in a terrifying mask of rage. "He dared to cheat me, I'll kill you," she shrieked, waving the knife wildly. "Everyone who cheats me has to die." The neighbors recoiled in fear. Even I was startled. I hadn't expected the shock to hit her this hard. "Victoria, calm down," Eleanor cried, stepping forward to intervene. Victoria slashed wildly, cutting her mother's arm. "Quick, call the police," someone shouted in panic. The police arrived and took Victoria away. An ambulance took Eleanor to the hospital. Sigh. Such a fine family. "How did it come to this?" a neighbor lamented. I smiled coldly. They reaped what they sowed. Later, I heard Victoria continued to be disruptive at the police station, screaming about killing Ethan. The police had her psychologically evaluated, declared her mentally unstable, and committed her to a psychiatric hospital. Eventually, Victoria tried to escape the hospital. She failed, and in the process, lost the baby. She completely broke down after that. During the day, she'd ask anyone she met at the hospital where Ethan was, vowing to kill him. At night, she'd cradle a pillow, rocking it gently, murmuring, "Hush, baby, don't cry. Mommy's here." Her parents, overwhelmed by the series of blows, were both hospitalized. With no family to care for them, they suffered abuse at the hands of hospital orderlies, clothes left unwashed, frequent beatings and verbal abuse, forced to eat leftovers. I felt no pity. Yesterday's causes lead to today's effects. Their family's fate was entirely of their own making. I acquired their failing company, injected capital, and revived it. Business boomed. 2 years later, I became one of the city's most prominent entrepreneurs, admired and respected by all. Online, people called me the city's most eligible bachelor. My future was bright. I was sent by my university to study abroad for a year. My fiancée, who had sworn she loved only me, found a look-alike substitute in the 3rd month I was gone. I saw him shamelessly sharing their sweet daily life on his social media feed. I saw my fiancée, who had always been an untouchable ice queen with me, shower him with endless affection. They say the one who isn't loved is the third wheel. "Victoria, what am I to you?" I saw my fiancée's reply, "You, of course, are the love of my life." Then the man pulled my fiancée into a deep kiss, and the video ended. I called her, only to be met with a curt, "I'm busy." Suddenly I felt there was no point in trying to salvage this. But later, my fiancée flew halfway across the world to win me back, begging me to give her another look. Chapter 1. The early autumn wind was already carrying a slight chill, but as I stood at the airport entrance, listening to the dial tone on my phone, I felt that no wind could be colder than the ice in my heart. Victoria Sutherland still wasn't answering. I just stood there, holding my phone until the call automatically disconnected, before I finally snapped back to reality. It was the 18th call I had made to her, and she still hadn't responded. She hadn't even replied to the messages I sent before boarding my flight. I scrolled up through our chat history. The frequency of Victoria's replies had slowed to a crawl, and her words had become more and more sparse. "I'm very busy. I'm at work." Phrases like these had become her standard way of brushing me off. But the old Victoria wasn't like this. Back then, no matter how late she worked, she would always wish me good night before bed. I took a deep breath, my fingertips trembling. It took an eternity to finally tap on that unfamiliar chat window. The dim lighting in the video couldn't hide the pale, naked bodies. That flushed face was so painfully familiar to me. Her familiar voice echoed from the phone once more. Even though I had already seen the video, a cold shiver still ran down my spine. "Vicky, big sis, do you know who I am? Are you still thinking about him? How could I be? He's not half the man you are. Ethan, slow down, baby. Wait." I fumbled to close the video, my vision blurring. A heavy weight pressed down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I felt like a wind-up toy on the verge of breaking down, making its last desperate twitches. This person had added me as a contact last night. He hadn't said a word, just sent me this video. I recognized her instantly. The woman moaning softly was my fiancée, Victoria, but I couldn't bring myself to believe it. The woman who had tearfully proposed to me 3 months ago, slipping, a ring on my finger as I left the country, had moved on so quickly. Over these 3 months, Victoria had indeed grown cold, but I had chalked it up to the normal challenges of a long-distance relationship, coupled with her demanding job. I never thought much of it. Only now did it dawn on me. It wasn't that she was too busy with work. It was that someone else was taking up all her time. That's why she had no time to deal with me. I spent the entire night scrolling through this man's social media feed. He bore a striking resemblance to me, about 80% similar, but our personalities were polar opposites. Perhaps because of my upbringing, I'm reserved and not one for sweet talk. Victoria often said I was as exciting as a wooden post, completely lacking in passion. But this man was nothing like me. He and Victoria had traveled to so many places, leaving a commemorative video at each stop. Some were places Victoria and I had been to. Others were places we had talked about visiting, but never got around to. But they all had one thing in common. At the end of each video, Victoria would wrap her arms around the man and shout at the camera with a smile, "I, Victoria Sutherland, swear the only man I'll ever love is Ethan Ford. Ethan Ford." That was the man's name. And me? What was I? I didn't know the answer to that question, and it was clear Victoria had no intention of letting me find out. In the taxi on the way home, I finally got a call from Victoria. Unfortunately, the moment I answered, I wasn't met with an explanation, but with her shrill accusations. "Sincere Harrison, what the hell do you think you're doing? Who gave you permission to fly back without saying a word?" In that moment, it was hard to describe my feelings. I was like a drowning man who had just found a piece of driftwood. But as I swam closer, I realized the wood was rotten from being soaked for too long. The slightest touch would be fatal. It couldn't possibly bear a person's weight. And just like that, I was plunged back into the boundless ocean. My breathing grew difficult, and only a wheezing sound escaped my lips when I tried to speak. Seeing my lack of response, Victoria muttered a few curses and hung up. My phone buzzed. Ethan Ford had sent me another video. This one was much clearer. I could even see it was filmed in the home Victoria and I shared. Victoria was sitting on the sofa, her face flushed, while Ethan knelt before her, his fingers busy doing something out of frame. When he looked up, a gasp escaped Victoria's lips. On Ethan's hand was a ring, glistening with a clear liquid. That was our wedding ring. "Big sis, does it feel better with the ring on or off? You naughty boy, you just love to tease me." My breath caught in my throat. I looked down at my own finger. Engraved inside that ring were the initials of my name and Victoria's. Before I left the country, she had pleaded with me, telling me never to take it off no matter what. She said it would let other girls know I had a fiancé, and they would keep their distance. I took her words to heart and never once disobeyed. I never imagined that, in her heart, this ring meant nothing at all. It was just so disgusting. Chapter 2. I still went back to the home I shared with Victoria. Looking at the familiar yet alien surroundings, my mind couldn't help but conjure images of Victoria and Ethan. I pictured them in the kitchen, cooking and cuddling, with Ethan wrapping his arms around Victoria's waist from behind, making her laugh flirtatiously. I pictured them after dinner, lying on the sofa watching a movie, and when the mood was right, Ethan would press her down onto the cushions and kiss her body. I pictured them moving from the sofa to the bedroom, their bodies entwined, unwilling to let go. And none of this was just my imagination. It was all laid out in what Ethan had posted on his feed. The photos, the videos, in every one of them, Victoria's smile was so bright and radiant. It seemed he had been planning for me to find out about all of this from the very beginning. Ethan had documented every little thing between him and Victoria on his social media, and I, like a masochist, had watched it all over and over again on the way here. Now, whenever I thought of Victoria, the only image that came to mind was of her kissing Ethan. I remembered her lying in his arms, purring as she begged him for kisses. At 11 o'clock that night, the front door opened. Victoria was finally home. Seeing me on the sofa, Victoria froze for a second, then a smile quickly spread across her face. She smiled at me with the same sweet, brilliant expression as before, as if nothing had happened. "Sincere, why aren't you in bed yet? Were you waiting for me?" Victoria spoke as she sat down next to me, reaching out to take my arm. She had always been clingy. When we were together, it was as if she had no bones in her body. always needing to be pressed up against me. I used to think it was a sign of her love for me. But after seeing the videos of her and Ethan, I realized that perhaps she just needed a man. I just happened to fit her criteria. But whether that man was me or someone else, she didn't care. I shifted my body, dodging her touch. The smile on Victoria's face stiffened for a moment, but she quickly composed herself. "Are you still mad about what happened at the airport?" "I'm sorry, Sincere. I apologize. Something came up at the office that I had to deal with, and then you came back from abroad without a word, hiding it from me. Of course, I was a little upset." Victoria's tone was tinged with a playful pout, just like the tone she used in the video when she was begging Ethan to slow down. I frowned, forcing down the urge to vomit and curse. Seeing that I wasn't speaking, Victoria pulled a tie out of her bag. "Look, a present for you. I bought this specially to cheer you up. Don't be mad at me anymore, Sincere." I stared at the tie and couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. Not just because I never wear suits, but because I had seen this tie before. This tie was the gift Victoria gave Ethan for their 2-month anniversary. Ethan had complained that the pattern was old-fashioned and he didn't like it. He only ever used it during their activities to tie Victoria's wrists. That's why the tie was so etched in my memory. I just never thought she would now give it to me. So in Victoria's eyes, am I only worthy of Ethan's cast-offs? And yet she was the one who held my hand and swore she would love me forever. Chapter 3. My story with Victoria began with her relentless pursuit. At the time, my mind was solely focused on my research. I had little interest in romance. But Victoria burst into my life like a scorching flame. I couldn't resist her passion, and I crumbled under her gaze, which was always filled with adoration. I even considered giving up my plans to study abroad. It was Victoria who persuaded me not to abandon my dreams, promising she would wait for me to come back. I thought she was genuinely supporting me. I never imagined that perhaps she was just waiting for me to leave so she could reveal her true colors. My cold reaction to the gift clearly displeased Victoria. She frowned, her tone laced with mockery. "Sincere Harrison, what's your problem? I went out of my way to buy you a gift to cheer you up, and this is the attitude I get? You spend a few months abroad and learn nothing except how to be as arrogant as the foreigners. I have things to do at the office. I don't have time to play house with you. I'm leaving." With that, Victoria stood up and strode towards the door. This was one of Victoria's favorite tactics. In the past, if I did anything that even slightly displeased her, she would pretend to leave, waiting for me to coax her back. I knew she was doing it on purpose, but because I loved her, I was willing to swallow my pride. But now, I sat motionless on the sofa, watching her back. My lips moved, and I finally spoke my first words since she had returned. "Victoria, where are our photos? The ones we took together." Her footsteps halted. She froze in place. I had noticed it as soon as I got home. The framed photos that used to be on the tables and hanging on the walls were all gone. With her back to me, Victoria's voice sounded a little guilty. I accidentally broke them, so I threw the frames away. I couldn't help but laugh out loud, because I knew exactly where those photos had gone. The first time Ethan came to our house, he said looking at them made him unhappy. To appease him, Victoria had thrown all our pictures in the trash. I couldn't help but remember how much time and effort she had put into getting those perfect shots with me. When the photos were printed, her eyes had sparkled as she looked at them. She pressed the pictures to her chest as if they were the most precious jewels. Then she instructed me to place them in the most conspicuous spot in the house. "I want you to be able to see me and think of me all the time." I did as she said. But the person Victoria wanted to see all the time was no longer me. So a woman's heart really can change that quickly. The ones on the table broke, but the ones on the wall broke too? Hearing my question, Victoria whipped around. Her eyes were wide as she stared at me, her voice turning sharp, a clear attempt to mask her guilt with aggression. "Sincere Harrison, what are you implying? You come back and you're already suspicious of me. If you don't trust me, why are you even with me?" I watched her feigned outrage, suddenly recalling how she once swore she would never get angry with me. But how could words spoken in love possibly count for anything now? For some reason, I suddenly felt all my strength drain away, a wave of exhaustion washing over me. Let it be. I didn't know what else there was to say. In the silence between us, Victoria's phone vibrated with a notification, perhaps out of guilt or perhaps out of nervousness. Victoria's hand trembled, and she accidentally hit the speakerphone button. Ethan's voice echoed clearly through the room. "Big sis, bring that leopard print lingerie set when you come." Chapter 4. Victoria scrambled to shut off the voice message, but not before Ethan's words had filled the room. Her face went pale. She shot a look at me, her words tumbling out in a rush. "Sincere, let me explain. It's not what you think. She stammered on I, for what felt like an eternity but couldn't come up with anything coherent. I let out a cold laugh, helpfully offering her an excuse. "What? Are you going to tell me this guy is an underwear designer, and he needed you to bring him lingerie for inspiration?" I wasn't aware the Sutherland family business had expanded into that market. I had never spoken to Victoria with such a sharp, sarcastic tone before I went. Abroad, we rarely even argued. We were the model couple in everyone's eyes. Victoria had a shy nature and was seldom overly affectionate with me in public. I respected her boundaries and had even told her that I wouldn't cross any lines before we were married. I just never thought that the same Victoria who would blush when I kissed her could be so wild with another man. Victoria wasn't a fool. She naturally caught the mockery in my tone. She bit her lip and said softly, "Sincere, trust me. I will give you an explanation." Throwing those words at me, she turned and fled, practically scrambling out the door. I sat on the sofa, looking down at my hands. I had already taken off the engagement ring before I even got home. Now, a faint pale line circled my finger, the only proof of how deeply I had once loved Victoria. But marks always fade, just like my love and disappointment for her. One day they would both be gone without a trace. That night, my mentor, Professor Albright, called me. The cheerful little old man who was always smiling in my presence was furious with me for the first time. He launched into a tirade over the phone, scolding me for abandoning my team and returning home, without a word at the most critical stage of our research, accusing me of having no team spirit. I knew my actions were somewhat childish and impulsive, but with some things left unresolved, I couldn't focus on my research. I promised him I would handle my family matters in the shortest time possible, and then return to the university to continue my work. The little old man was skeptical but ultimately chose to believe me. Since I had decided to make a clean break with Victoria, I went to her company first thing the next morning. It was a last resort, given that she wasn't answering my calls or replying to my messages. But before I could even reach her office, a man strode past me and barged right in, plopping down on the sofa. He brazenly kicked off his shoes right there in the office, then casually picked up a cup from her desk and chugged the contents. I froze on the spot, recognizing him immediately as Ethan Ford. But that wasn't what shocked me. What shocked me was that Victoria had mild OCD and never allowed anyone to touch her things. I remembered once I brought her a cake from far away, but because I was sweaty from the trip, she wrinkled her nose in disgust, threw the cake away, and said my sweat had contaminated it and she wouldn't eat it. For Victoria, I had changed many of my habits after we moved in together. I cleaned the house every day to ensure it was spotless. I was meticulous about not having the slightest unpleasant odor on me. But now Ethan's actions were so casual, it was obvious this wasn't his first time. His shoes were strewn in the walkway, and his bare feet were propped up on the sofa. Even I, someone without OCD, couldn't help but frown at the sight. But Victoria, she got up from her desk, walked over to Ethan, and not only showed no sign of disgust, but gently wiped the sweat from his forehead. "Where have you been? You're all sweaty. Weren't you tired?" Just as the words left her mouth, she seemed to sense something, turning her head towards the door and meeting my gaze. Victoria's hand froze in midair, and the smile in her eyes gradually turned to panic and dread. I smiled faintly and said softly, "Congratulations. You've found the love of your life." Chapter 5. I had no desire to say anything more to Victoria and turned to leave, but she rushed after me, grabbing my wrist. "Sincere, you misunderstood. He was just running an errand for me, so I was just showing a little concern. It's not what you think." Her voice was frantic. If I hadn't seen so many glimpses of her life with Ethan, I might have actually believed I had misunderstood her. Before I could speak, Ethan, who had followed Victoria, chimed in nonchalantly. "Yeah, bro, don't misunderstand big sis. She just couldn't bear to see me working so hard, so she took pity on me. Maybe she's just being nice to me because I look a little like you." Though his words were apologetic, his eyes and face were filled with mockery and pride. I heard the passive-aggressive tone in Ethan's voice and found it almost funny. I had often heard about and seen examples of manipulative, feigning innocence types online, but I never thought I'd meet one in real life. But clearly Victoria didn't see it that way. She nodded vigorously at Ethan's words. "Yes, I was only looking at him because he looks like you, Sincere. Really, you have. To believe me," I looked down at Victoria and forcefully pulled my hand away. "Victoria, you know exactly what you're thinking. Before I went abroad, you told me that if I ever fell for another girl, you would leave me without a second thought. I'm saying the same words back to you now." Ignoring Victoria's panicked gaze, I strode out of her company. I went home to my parents, Robert and Helen Harrison, and told them I had decided to break off the engagement with Victoria. My parents were shocked by my decision. They knew how deep my feelings for Victoria were. Although Victoria had been the one to pursue me initially, once we were together, I had treated the relationship with the utmost seriousness. I would grant any request Victoria made, practically willing to pluck the stars from the sky for her. She was my first girlfriend, and I didn't know how to treat someone well. So I just used every method I could think of, all just to make her happy. Under my parents' questioning, I had no choice but to tell them the truth. My father was silent for a moment before saying, "Don't worry, son, we won't let you be wronged." In that moment, I felt like a child who hadn't yet come of age, and my eyes suddenly stung with tears. My father summoned Victoria's parents, Stephen and Martha Sutherland, to our house to discuss breaking off the engagement. Mr. and Mrs. Sutherland were very surprised and asked if there had been some misunderstanding. I still wanted to leave Victoria with some dignity in front of her parents, so I just said that the feelings between us were gone. But I never expected that Mr. Sutherland would not only refuse but also call Victoria over. He said that if there was a misunderstanding, it should be cleared up face to face. When Victoria first arrived, she looked annoyed, but when she heard I wanted to call off the engagement, her eyes widened in shock. "No, I don't agree, Sincere Harrison. Did you find another woman abroad? Is that why you want to break up with me?" Faced with Victoria's attempt to turn the tables and accuse me, I found it utterly laughable. At this point, I no longer wanted to afford her that last shred of dignity. I looked at her with a cold smile and demanded, "Who's the one with someone else? You know perfectly well in your heart. Victoria, you can't have your cake and eat it too. I'm setting you free to be with your true love. Shouldn't you be happy?" Victoria's face darkened, and she gritted her teeth, looking absolutely furious. I understood why Victoria didn't want to break the engagement. Her mother, Martha, had married into the family as the other woman, driving out the original wife. If it weren't for her engagement to me, the position of head of the Sutherland family business would never have gone to Victoria. Breaking up with me would mean losing everything she now possessed, so Victoria couldn't take that risk. Her anger suddenly vanished, replaced by a pleading look in her eyes. "Sincere, I truly love you. Can you please give me another chance?" I looked into Victoria's eyes, feeling nothing at all. I remembered a time when my greatest fear was seeing her cry. "You really love me?" You love me so much that you went to bed with another man?" At my words, both of Victoria's parents stared at her in utter shock. Victoria's lips trembled as she still tried to argue. I only did it because I love you so much. That's why I found a substitute who looks just like you." Listening to Victoria's words, I felt a sense of profound absurdity. In that instant, the image of Victoria I had held in my mind completely shattered. I finally had the courage to admit that perhaps I had never really known the woman I once loved. I stood up from the sofa. As far as I was concerned, this conversation was over. Looking into Victoria's eyes, I said, word by word, "I am breaking off this engagement." Chapter 6. I no longer cared about saving Victoria's face. I took out my phone and found my chat history with Ethan Ford. The moment the obscene video started playing, the expressions on everyone's faces changed. Even though I had seen it before, when Victoria's voice filled the room, a mocking sneer still crossed my face. "Is this what you call loving me? Victoria, when you were moaning his name, were you thinking of me then too?" Victoria clearly hadn't expected me to go this far. Her face was deathly pale. My father frowned and roared, "Stephen Sutherland, is this your wonderful daughter?" Stephen Sutherland was Victoria's father. He stood there with a grim face, silent. It was Victoria's mother, Martha, who spoke up nervously. "Mr. Harrison, perhaps it's a misunderstanding. You know kids are young. What if—" "Yes, she's young. I'd almost forgotten you were doing the same sort of thing at her age." My mother, Helen, cut Martha Sutherland off coldly. The woman's face went white, and she said no more. Being the other woman who breaks up a marriage isn't unheard of in our circle, but it is, after all, disgraceful. When Victoria first started pursuing me, I had judged her because of her mother's history. But at the time, Victoria had cried, saying she and her mother were two different people, and I shouldn't judge her based on her mother's actions. Back then, I had felt guilty about it for a long time. I just never imagined that she and her mother were cut from the same cloth. Mr. Sutherland, probably feeling utterly humiliated, shot up from his seat and said to Victoria, "Victoria, you have disappointed me so much. If this engagement is off, then the presidency will go to your brother." That single sentence drained all the color from Victoria's face. Mr. Sutherland left, but Victoria stayed. She strode over to me, grabbed my hand, and begged me to give her another chance. When I ignored her, Victoria's legs gave way, and she dropped to her knees in front of me. Her hands clutched the hem of my shirt, her eyes filled with a helpless, pleading gaze. "Sincere, I'm begging you. I really know I was wrong. Please give me one more chance. Just one." Her tone was so pitiful and sincere, but not an ounce of pity stirred in my heart, because I knew perfectly well that Victoria never thought she was wrong. She was just suddenly terrified after realizing the price she would have to pay for leaving me. I looked at the tears on Victoria's face and slowly pried my shirt from her grasp. "Victoria, what you need isn't another chance. It's a punishment." Amidst Victoria's sobs, I turned and walked upstairs without a backward glance. While the matter of our broken engagement was still being settled, Ethan Ford couldn't wait any longer. He found me on a messaging app and began to brag about how thoughtful and caring Victoria was to him. He even admitted he did it on purpose, that all those videos and photos on his feed were posted for me to see. Let me be honest with you. Vicky and I have known each other for a long time. She was only with you for your status. Did you really think she liked you? After that, Ethan sent me a video. It was dark, but I could still clearly hear Victoria's voice. "Sincere Harrison, he's just a tool to get me this position. How could I have feelings for a tool? Besides, he's nothing like you. He's not as obedient as you are, and not nearly as enthusiastic." The rest of the video was filled with sounds I couldn't bear to hear. I closed the video with a blank expression and saw a new message from Ethan. "Did you hear that, Sincere Harrison? You're just a tool. I'm the one big sis truly loves. If I were you, I'd just back off quietly. I had originally planned for an amicable split with Victoria, but if she couldn't control the people around her, she couldn't blame me for what came next. I didn't reply to Ethan. Instead, I forwarded the video he sent me, along with screenshots of his feed, to Victoria's dear older brother, Jacob Sutherland. I had a feeling Jacob would be very pleased with the gift I sent him. Chapter 7. Jacob Sutherland and his mother had always despised Victoria and hers. Having received such explosive material, they naturally weren't going to sit on it. The next day, the obscene videos and recordings of Victoria and Ethan were all over the internet. I took the opportunity to publicly announce that my engagement with Victoria was off. An engaged woman, who also happened to be a company president, having an affair. It was huge gossip. The kind of story office workers would laugh about over lunch for weeks. Instantly, the Sutherland Company became the laughingstock of the business world. Mr. Sutherland was furious about the scandal. Although Jacob also got an earful, it was Victoria who was stripped of her presidency, falling from grace overnight. She tried to find me, camping outside our house, desperate to see me just once. I was out shopping with my mother when Victoria caught me. She no longer had the confident air of a president. Her face was pale and her eyes were swollen like walnuts. The moment she saw me, her eyes lit up. Sincere, wait, listen to me. Victoria tried to catch up to me, but in her haste, she tripped over her own feet and fell flat on her face. My mother frowned and was about to say something, but I stopped her. I gently patted her hand to calm her, then walked towards Victoria. Standing over her, I looked down at her pathetic state, but I felt no sense of ridicule. It was like looking at a stranger. My heart was completely unmoved. Victoria looked up, her face scraped and bleeding slightly. Seeing me, her eyes lit up again, her smile filled with a sliver of hope. It was as if she had seen her last chance. Sincere, I knew it. You do still care about me, don't you? I promise. I'll never do anything like that again. Please, Sincere. Just give me one more chance. Tears streamed from Victoria's eyes. She sobbed, a picture of pitiful vulnerability. But to me, they were just crocodile tears. Over the past few days, I had someone investigate how Victoria and Ethan met. Just as Ethan had said, he and Victoria had known each other even before she and I met, though they weren't together back then. But I couldn't help but wonder if my resemblance to Ethan was part of the reason Victoria had pursued me. One thing was certain, Victoria didn't love me. She might have loved this face, or perhaps the Harrison family behind me, but it was never me. And if Ethan, in his ambition, had never added me on the messaging app, if I had never found out about all this, perhaps I would still be abroad right now, worrying myself sick over Victoria's unanswered calls. Victoria. Her eyes lit up as she looked at me with anticipation. If you would stop harassing me, I might actually have a shred of respect for you. You did what you did. Since you had the nerve to do it, why don't you have the courage to face the consequences? Do you know, just looking at you now makes me sick. With every word I spoke, Victoria's face grew paler. I ignored her despairing gaze and turned to walk away with my mother. The scandal involving Victoria and Ethan continued to escalate online. Someone even dug up the fact that Victoria's mother had married into the family as the other woman. The phrase like mother, like daughter spread like wildfire, dragging them both down to hell. But the most sensational development was when someone posted old photos of Victoria's mother, identifying her as a former student of a finishing school for social climbers. Everything she had learned was for the sole purpose of marrying into a wealthy family. Well, that settled it. Any claim Victoria had that her parents were in love was now exposed as a long conspired plot. And Mr. Sutherland, who had always believed Victoria's mother was his soulmate, I wondered how he would handle the truth. At least in the photos leaked by the media, Mr. Sutherland looked exceptionally grim. Even more surprisingly, it turned out that the man who looked so much like me was also a product of a social climbing academy. So, It was a case of what goes around, comes around. In the end, they were left with nothing. The day before I was scheduled to fly back to school, I heard that Mr. Sutherland had divorced Victoria's mother. Not only that, but as if he'd had a sudden epiphany, he began trying to win back Jacob Sutherland's mother. How that ended, I never found out. Just before I boarded my flight, I received a message from Jacob Sutherland. He had now rightfully inherited his father's company and no longer had to live under the shadow of his stepmother. His own bright future was just beginning. Thank you. Looking at the message on my phone screen, the corner of my mouth twitched into a smile. At least Ethan Ford had done one good thing. All those things he had recorded had proven useful after all. Chapter 8. After returning to the university, I threw myself into my academic research, paying no mind to matters back home. Only when I spoke with my mother on the phone would she occasionally bring it up. After her mother's divorce from Mr. Sutherland, Victoria was left with nothing. Falling from the clouds overnight, her temper grew increasingly volatile. To make matters worse, even Ethan Ford had dumped her for another wealthy woman. Victoria, now pregnant, went to confront Ethan, only to be thrown out. She not only lost her boyfriend but also miscarried the baby. After that, Victoria became somewhat unhinged, telling everyone she meant that she was a president and her boyfriend was studying abroad. Her mother, not wanting to be saddled with such a burden, threw Victoria out of the house. As for Ethan, his life wasn't much better. The new sugar mommy he'd found was notorious in their circle for her sadistic tendencies and tortured him relentlessly. Eventually, unable to bear it any longer, he murdered her and was arrested. My mother said it seemed he was sentenced to life in prison. I listened to it all like a work of fiction, clucking my tongue in amazement. A year later, my research was complete. My achievements abroad made me the youngest distinguished professor upon my return home. I had even left my name in the annals of my field of research. Half a year after that, I met a woman at the university. Like me, she had also studied abroad. We were a perfect match in every way, from our family backgrounds to our life experiences. We naturally became a couple. She was different from Victoria. She wasn't overly clingy, nor did she ask questions that were impossible to answer. Being with her felt like being with a long married couple. Everything was just right. Because of this, our journey from dating to engagement was exceptionally smooth. The day I accompanied her to look at wedding dresses, we encountered a beggar in tattered clothes at the entrance of the bridal shop. The beggar nearly bumped into her, but I was quick enough to pull my fiancée away. After making sure she was unharmed, I turned back, intending to scold the beggar. But then I saw a face that was both strange and familiar. Though the face was covered in a mix of new and old scars, I recognized her at once. It was Victoria. Victoria didn't seem to recognize me. Her eyes were vacant and lifeless, and she just kept muttering to herself. "My boyfriend is coming back from his studies soon. I'm a president, hee. You're all just jealous of me." "What's wrong?" my fiancé asked. "It's nothing." I averted my gaze and took my fiancé's hand, walking right past Victoria.